So I had been an undergraduate at the University of Oregon back in another lifetime. Went off and did my graduate work and had my first teaching job back east. And I came back in 1998. Was very happy to be here, thinking that this was a place that I wanted to finish out my career. At the time when we started talking about the union, I think there was a feeling among a lot of us in the faculty that there was a lot that we knew could be better, felt that it could be better if we actually worked together. I had been 2 terms on the faculty senate, and I think a number of us had sort of put in some time in university-wide service. And while it was a good way to get to know people across the different units and to start talking about ways in which we would like to have a stronger voice in our working conditions and our lives here, there was the sense that you did a lot of talking and you had a lot of meetings, but nothing changed very much. We started talking about ways in which we could sort of pull together as a faculty across the campus, and particular areas of concern, a lot of them having to do with policies that were not even written down, that were sort of long-term practices that somebody knew about because they'd been here for a while and they passed it on, and you sort of watched those be implemented, sometimes in fine ways and other times in very inequitable ways or illogical ways. There was certainly a concern about salaries and benefits. We went for years with basically no raises at all. Feeling very lucky to be here in Oregon, pretty not bad benefits, and we could always go to the coast in an hour, but that didn't really compensate for the fact that we were steadily losing ground in terms of our salaries. I think at the beginning when we started talking, there was a lot of concern about whether the tenure track faculty, the non-tenure track faculty, the part-time faculty all had the same, wouldn't have conflicting interests to try to unionize. We were really trying to imagine a bargaining unit that would have very broad coverage, and we were running into, from a lot of different constituencies, people saying, well, aren't we going to be pitting these units against each other because they want different things? So a lot of what happened initially was really, it was education and communication and thinking through ourselves about what the point of having a union would be, and realizing the more we talked, and I think what was exciting about that initial move was really sort of getting out there and talking to people in very different parts of the campus, in very different units, and very different job descriptions, and realizing how much we all had in common in terms of what we aspired to for this university. And certainly I know in my department we have a lot of NTTF, we have a really solid group of TTF, a solid group of NTTF, and it was very clear to us that we cared about the specifics for people who were maybe not in our own job description, but that it was to everybody's benefit to have our non-tenure track folks having a living wage, workload that was doable. So I got involved very early, and the initial part of the campaign was running into a certain amount of resistance because a faculty union, especially a faculty union that is as broad as ours, was not something that there were a lot of models for. And I think it took a while for people to realize that this was a certain kind of organizing that we were going to basically define for ourselves in a lot of ways, with help from other people coming in from the outside, but that basically this was our union and we got to say what we wanted to focus on and how we wanted to make it work. So losing my train of thought.
Sounds wonderful so far. You touched on a couple of points that nobody else has, and they're important, like this uncertainty about these different units.
I think one thing that happened was that, I mean, when I'm thinking back to where the resistance was that had to be overcome, some of it was certain number of faculty felt that faculty were not employees as much as they were colleagues, and that because we were all colleagues, we should work at all our problems out as colleagues, and we didn't need a union. I think some of that was all of us recognizing that with the kind of corporatization of the university, that the situation was not what it maybe had been 20 or 30 years ago, and that we were fighting a trend that was sort of quantifying things and bean counting and measuring things in ways that were running counter to what we wanted the educational mission to be, and that one of the problems of that is you can end up in little isolated units where everybody would be thinking the same thing in different places but not actually having the time or the place or the space to bring those ideas together to do anything effective. And that's what organizing and collective work is to do that. So that's what, a union could offer. The other thing that we ran into, I think, was a kind of a suspicion that this was some outside organization, that the union was going to come in and the union was going to then change things on the campus, change the sort of the collegiality of it, and impose all kinds of sort of reductive, lowest common denominator things. And that was really a matter of communicating that the union was going to be us. That when we're going around and we're saying, let's form a union, we're saying we're going to be the ones who are going to be defining this. We're going to be the ones who are going to be sitting at the table and talking about what we know from on the ground is important. We're going to be it's going to be democratic. We're going to be representing the membership. We're going to be doing the work. We may get some resources from both AFT and AAUP. Without them, we wouldn't be able to get the energy to do this, but they're not coming in from the outside saying, we are the union and we're doing this to you or for you. We're the ones who are doing it to and for ourselves. So that was a lot of the kind of preparation for it, and it was, I think, especially exciting to find that we could pull together from really a wide group of people and interests and really find common ground, either common ground for things that were going to be good for all of us, and some of those just have to do with sort of having transparent, clear, equitable policies, and a voice in priorities for the university. What do we want this university to be focusing on as we move forward? And the other part that for me was really, and I think for a lot of us was really heartening, was the sense that we care about each other, that the people who have children and are really concerned about what's available for childcare and how we're going to, make it possible for families. Other people who don't have children or who have had children in the past or who are whatever could still care about them, and they could care about people who have issues with heading towards retirement, and people could be concerned with those who are coming up for tenure, and people could, so that, we all had a kind of a shared interest in the common good, I guess you'd call it. So that was pretty exciting. So it was a long and invigorating experience bringing it in, and I think there were a certain number of people who held back and said, let's wait and see. I'm not sure this is a good idea. And I'm moving into your second question now to say that one of the things that happened that's been sort of wonderful right now as we're heading into the beginning of our second contract is that I think the first contract and the implementation of the first contract in wonderful, productive collaboration between the administration and the faculty in the union has kind of allayed a lot of the concerns, and we've seen that it actually is something that we can all work together collegially about. And I've been talking to some people about what it is that makes this such a good thing for the University of Oregon. And one particular thing about a faculty union is that we aren't divided into camps of bosses and workers. We are all colleagues, which doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a union. It actually means that we can have a very productive union, because we have people in the administration who are also our colleagues on the faculty. People cycle through, they may become a department head, go out of the bargaining unit, cycle back in. So there's a respect and understanding on both sides, and I think we've seen that really played out over the last couple of years as we were implementing the first contract and bargaining for the second contract. So it feels as though we're in a point right now, just having finished the negotiations and heading into a 3-year contract, where we can really start to work on a lot of the issues that are of concern for the faculty in the next couple of years. Well, certainly we actually saw some raises. We saw the the creation of policies that would actually be determined by the faculty, available, readable, transparent, and grievable if necessary. So there's a way in which there's a kind of security that there are things have actually been discussed, thought about, and are starting to be put into place so that we know what the working conditions are. The role of the NTTF in having a voice in making decisions has been dramatically changed, so that I think some departments maybe already gave some voice to the non-tenure track faculty. I think a lot of places on campus, they were virtually unheard in anything that had to do with governance in those departments, and that's been changed so that you actually have that voice in there. I think that's been a huge, huge gain. Still, I think that there's a sense of security about policies and procedures that has taken away some of the sort of anger that was here before. Everything isn't fixed, it's not better, but we do have a sense that we know what the channels are for continuing to work at the things that need to be worked at. It's also been really reassuring to find that how well we can work together, the faculty senate working on things that are really the sort of the business of the Senate, the union working on the more working conditions piece, but that they are very complementary and can support each other. So there's a way in which the faculty senate was always there to think about the hard questions of, what should be the educational mission and how that should be carried out. It didn't have much, it really didn't have any teeth. Now there's a way in which the Senate and the union together give the communication, which is so necessary. I mean, that's what you want. You want to know that what's happening in one school or another, or one department or another, that we're not sort of replicating things without any kind of way of pulling together and sort of making some positive changes. So that's been really, really good. And then I have to say, personally, when I did the initial campaign, and it was exhausting, and there was a good number of us doing it, but it was also, you wondered, is this going to be sustainable as something that we do? As this is we're all full-time faculty, and we're working very hard, and our workloads are not going to get a whole lot easier fast. And how are we going to keep this going if we have to do that? And it's been wonderful to see that yes, it's something it's a collective effort, and it's not dependent on any single individual. After the first contract came through, I actually pulled way back for a year or two and had minimal activity, and then I thought I'm ready to get back in and do something, and now I'm got myself elected to the executive, and I'm doing much more work now than I did for a couple of years. But it was during those 2 years I just looked at all the people who had stepped in, and I have a sense as I go out and talk to faculty that there are people who at various times in their careers will have more or less energy to be activists, but that there will always be that kind of energy. So it feels sustained and sustainable, which is very exciting. I'm heading towards retirement, so this is the last chapter of my career actually on the faculty of the university. At some point in the next few years I will be easing my way out, and it feels like a great legacy to leave the University of Oregon in the hands that it's in. I think we've got 2 other strong unions on this campus, and we came along with this faculty union, and I think it makes the campus better. It makes the campus, and it's necessary because the pressures from the outside, the pressures against higher education, the pressures to have everything reduced to what it can bring in terms of sort of specific job-oriented, money results are very strong. The pressures on this campus to have certain kinds of priorities that we don't all necessarily embrace are also not to ignore. So faculty voice and faculty agency determination of what this university is going to be as it moves forward, I think is really vital. So I'm very hopeful.